Today we're speaking with Frances Harris. Frances is the author of the book 18 Years Without Sex, published May of 2022. I want to start by reading the foreword to the book. For 18 years, Frances Harris lived a life that many would find hard to believe. He went 18 years without sex. From his early teens, sex and drugs were a normal part of his life. However, after a bad trip on mushrooms turned his life upside down, everything came to a crashing halt. Following the aftermath, Frank became a changed man, and he surprisingly chose to remain abstinent until he got married. The journey wasn't always easy, and there were many times when he could have had sex, yet despite how attractive the women were and how approving society would have been for him to indulge his lusts, Frank managed to resist the temptation. How did he do it? And perhaps more importantly, why did he do it? Join Frank as he explores his life growing up in the streets, his view of premarital sex growing up, and how God changed that view by offering him a life that surpassed even the greatest sex he had had. Which kind of brings us to our conversation today. Um,
Yeah,
so I just got your book yesterday, in full disclosure. I didn't have the opportunity to finish it. Are you working on an audio version?
not as of yet. So I wanted to see what type of progress the book made before I went any further with any other um ways of getting it out there.
Yeah, that's kind of been my position now. Um,
Gotcha. On the
it's
podcast.
Well, with the book. I just finished my second book here last week. I
Okay,
have
I didn't know you had wrote any.
Yeah. Well, no good ones. Not, the second one I do have high hopes for. But you've got a good book there. And I do recommend people get it. So hopefully this will grease the wheels a little bit. Uh,
Okay.
we're not going to see eye to eye on the religious aspect of it, and we're probably not going to come together on celibacy in general. I don't plan on going 18 years without sex. And by the way, I don't think I started recording this part. So the title of the book is 18 Years Without Sex. And like I was just getting ready to say, I don't plan on going 18 years without sex, at least not intentionally, though it seems increasingly more likely that it may turn out to be the case if you catch my drift. But and all the dorks like me out there might see the title of your book and say, just 18? Is that all? You might want to, the sequel might want to be 25 years without sex if you really want to catch
Yeah,
people's.
depending
Yeah.
on people's experiences and also different cultures as well. So, and again, they can have a different reaction depending on, the background of the person that's is coming across it.
So, well, one thing that we can most certainly come together on, which is the currency that's involved in the mindset. Don't be a slave to your desires, rather make desires your slave. And
Hmm.
to start, some of the questions that I've got for you, I already know the answer to, but I imagine a lot of people listening
Okay.
don't. So if they're anything like me, the first thing I had thought was, when you read 18 years without sex, is is that age 0 to 18 or age 20 to 38? Because as you can imagine, that they're quite different accomplishments.
Yeah. So the duration of my abstinence was from the age of 18 to 36. Yeah, so I stopped basically at my prime when a lot of people would be indulging. But how it happened, that's when I had hung up my cape, I guess, before I started to fly. But said actually I was flying way early than a lot of people, I guess.
What made you want to write the book in the first place? Was it a bucket list item for you, or you felt like you had to get something out?
I just thought it could be um I thought it was needful for the day and time we're in. I never had intentions of writing a book I said all throughout the 18 years of my abstinence, I never started writing it, or, I probably had an idea come in my mind here and there, but never nothing serious. But as time went on and seeing um, the issue with it, even among Christian circles, and also in the world that we're living in with the hypersexuality of things, everything is sexualized from television to clothing to how we
Toothpaste
portray
advertisements.
toothpaste
Yeah,
advertisements. Yeah, you got throwing a girl there that's to sell the toothpaste.
yeah,
So
right.
we're just inundated from every angle. And like I said, seeing the issue that it is in the church and in the world, and knowing the lessons that I learned from it, and being able to come to a place to abstain from it, I thought I uh, had something to offer. So I put it in a book.
Now, so can you make a case for why this would be a helpful thing for anyone, including an atheist or of any particular background?
I believe I could. The book is largely spiritually based, as I'm pretty sure you gathered. I don't know how far you made it in there, but
You do make the case that it's not just a Christian thing. There are benefits that are not exclusive to the Bible and things of that nature.
yeah, yeah, indeed. And one of the arguments that I've often put forth as far as the validity of God's commandments, on how they have practical benefit if you even remove God from the equation, that statistically, if we were to follow God's commandments, that they would still have a statistically better result than living the alternative to it. And in this case, you can look at um, abstinence versus, well, waiting until marriage, not complete abstinence. But when I say abstinence, I mean waiting until marriage to have sex
Right.
versus having sex before marriage. Now, if you wait until marriage, you can avoid things like pregnancy, unplanned pregnancies, STDs, the premature emotional bond, or create an emotional bond with somebody that you may not possibly have a long-term relationship with,
Hmm.
and the emotional and psychological problems that can come along with that, and the breakup process, and even financial problems. You have a child with somebody that you'll end up being with, got child support, you got another demand of upon your finances to take care of a child, so that you may not even have been prepared for. And then all the hassle with that, and then even the child not having a stable home. Not to say that a single parent can't provide a healthy home to a degree, but ideally, a two-parent household is the healthiest environment for a child, even statistically. So
Yeah.
yeah, like you were saying, it has its benefits, even if you don't prescribe to um, a religion or spirituality in any way.
I came from a one-parent household. The
Hmm.
statistics on that are something like 90% of the prison population comes from a one-parent household. So there's a pretty strong case to be made that there's utility in a two-parent household.
Hmm. And I used to work in prison, so
Oh, did you?
and yeah, I mentioned that very, very briefly in the book, but that was to the point that I just had brought up about the two-parent household. And I used to run cognitive behavior therapy groups there, CBT groups,
Mm-hmm.
with different inmates from various backgrounds, high risk inmates. So it could be anything from rape to murder. And a question that I asked them a couple times, I said, raise your hand if you was raised in a two-parent household. And sometimes, if I remember correctly, no hands went up.
Wow.
I think the most was probably one,
Jeez.
uh, from what I remember correctly. But I used to do that to set the stage, to highlight how important it is as far as giving them insight as to where their problems have began. A lot of times you can trace it back to what was going on in your household.
Sure.
And I used to use that to basically prep the stage to diving into deeper issues with them to get them to discover the roots as to why they ended up choosing the path they did.
So what is the common denominator there, do you think? Is the in the one parent household, is it that they don't get enough love and attention and they seek it other ways, or is it just as simple as not getting values, or what do you think the connection is?
I think it's a combination of a multitude of things. Um, uh, I mean, a mother had, I believe that a mom has something uniquely to offer, and I believe that a father has something uniquely to offer. And when you don't have one or the other, you can be, I want to be careful how I word it, but off the top, I guess, robbed in a sense from experiencing what you should experience as a child.
Yeah.
Um, but apart from that, when you're raised in a single parent household, a lot of times there's other things that come into play as to why there is a single parent household. So it could be divorce, it could be some type of abuse that was evolved that led up to it, or it could be the value system of the family that were raised in. They may not believed in waiting until marriage to have kids or something like that. And
Hmm.
that their belief system could open up them, putting them in a position to be a single parent household. And then you have the challenges to be more financially um, stable when you're doing it on your own as a parent. And then that can pose different hurdles as far as furthering yourself. And then that can put you in a more lower income environment. And when you're in a lower income environment, you have the factors that come with a lower income environment, such as drugs and abuse and all those type of things. So,
Yeah. Also
um,
verifiable statistically.
yes.
Yeah. That's a good point. I never correlated the two, but yeah, most certainly a two income household is, a few people can argue that that's not better. Uh, and
Yeah.
growing up, I mean, we were always struggling. I mean, my mom was always having us worry about paying the bills, and it was like this constant fear that she instilled into us. Like, I don't
Mhm.
know if we're gonna pay the rent.
Yeah. Yeah. Could be living on the streets tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Mhm.
And I mean, I didn't go into this conversation thinking what I can contribute to it, or really even, although it seems silly now, but I didn't really foresee having a conversation about one parent households, although it's perfectly reasonable. But I
It's
should
a
have.
natural flow of things. It's
Yeah.
good though. I enjoy it.
Yet for me, having not having a father, so I had a single parent mother, and I guess that would also there would also be a difference in experience from one person having just a father and somebody having just a mother. But so I had just a mother, and so I didn't have someone's approval necessarily, and she was always working 7 days a week,
Hmm.
um, an insanely large number of hours a day, and so I never really saw her, and so I never really got approval. So my self-worth was connected to what I would achieve. And so I
Hmm.
was just always in the mindset of like, I have to achieve, I have to just they call it the striver's curse. Where
Hmm.
it's like I've got to do stuff and it's got to be bigger and better than everybody else.
Yeah.
Rather than just feeling like you can relax and be who you are and people are gonna love you.
Hmm.
So it may have caused me to do some unorthodox things that that can be okay, but can also be pretty bad if what you're doing is unethical. I mean, in my case, I went into the army and did that and traveled the world and had some pretty good experiences, but also led to some pretty toxic behaviors and me not appreciating friends. They were just like utilities,
Hmm.
and feeling like I couldn't relax.
Yeah, a healthy. Like I said, the majority of people who have took dysfunctional paths or um 9 times out of 10 they can trace it back to what environment they're raised in having a significant contribution to. I won't put all the reason onto a on what type of household you're raised in, because there's always those exceptions of people that came from uh, substance abuse households that never touched, I mean, alcohol or drugs a day in their life. But the
Yeah,
majority of the times, that's not the case, you know.
yeah. Well, see, that's my book is mostly on statistics and understanding why statistics are important. And in the introduction, I mentioned, yeah, but guy. And so many
Mhm.
times where I'm talking about, like, yeah, 9 out of 10 people do this, somebody always chimes in and goes, yeah, but, and, and it's like, we can't overlook that 9 out of 10 times you can expect this. But
Exactly.
of course, there's an exception. Don't overlook a valid point someone's trying to make in order
And
to change
yeah,
life.
and to piggyback off that, single parents can become defensive just from hearing the conversation that we're hearing.
Mm,
They could be raising a child and they hear this and they get up in arms because they're a single parent and they think it's a judgment on them. But
right.
that's not the case. How it should be received is just to put you more, to make you more mindful of what you may have to do in order to create a more healthy environment for your child. May have to cause you to look inward, or what I mean, to certain behaviors or a psychology you prescribe to, but it's not meant to condemn or what have you. But a lot of times when people are presented with evidence-based stuff or just stuff that, what I mean, is can be observed from anybody, they often get in defensive mode because they perceive it as a personal attack. But really could, I mean, the mature response, in my opinion, would be to take it and use it to your benefit. Because if you know that the chances are more likely for your child to turn out a certain way, it should cause you to reevaluate your life and to see what you could do better to create a more healthier environment so that doesn't have to be the case. And it doesn't have to be the case because there have been successful children that have come from single parent homes.
Before I get too distracted, can you tell me a little bit more about your experience working in the prison? Because it seems like pretty wild. You had some of the more higher risk inmates. I forget the term you used, but
Yeah, yeah, that was the term.
what were the age groups?
18 to elderly. I think I had a guy that was, yeah, probably in his 70s, probably a few of them in their 70s. So
It seems.
young heads to old heads.
Did you feel like you made any headway with them?
Definitely, that was the best job that I've had so far. The only complaint that I would have about it was just the pay. If they had offered me a little bit more, I would have been continuing to do that.
Yeah, no, I feel you on that. That's the case with so many jobs where people are doing useful things. Unfortunately, they don't pay very much. The best job I ever had was being an English teacher, and
Mm,
it was low pay. I'll
yeah.
probably never do it again unless I retire or become independently wealthy. Um,
Listen,
just
the
because of it.
jobs, yeah, the jobs that have a lot of impact for some reason have some of the lowest pay, which is interesting. Uh,
It's a real shame.
yeah,
So,
but
what are some examples? Yeah, so tell me about your experience there, if you would.
um going in there, I didn't know quite what to expect, how to receive. I didn't know if I was going to get approached with jailhouse stereotype stuff, that was portrayed on movies. What you doing here,
Hmm.
the intimidation thing, and so I didn't quite know what to expect. Um, I kind of expected that they would be on guard a little bit. They're meeting somebody new. And also some of them, no, not some of them, all of them. No, no, no. The majority of them were mandated to my program, so that didn't make a lot of them happy campers from the get-go.
Right.
They're already in prison dealing with a plethora of problems, and now they're being mandated to go to a program on top of it.
Yeah.
So,
Speaking of statistics, people are far more likely to adhere to programs that they are voluntarily a part of.
yeah, it shows and it lends itself to showing that they have incentive,
Yeah.
and motivation towards making use of whatever program that is. But like I said, in their case, a lot of them that wasn't the case. But what I did have to my advantage is that I came from the background that many of them did, and I did the same things that they did, and I did some things that were even worse in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of them, definitely had me beat when it came to different crimes, but coming from that background, criminal lifestyle, street culture, and knowing the different uh, ethics or whatever of the street, coming in there, I had that to my advantage. So that gave them a even um, them professing it on their behalf is the reason why they opened up and took to me the way that they did, because it was one of them speaking to them in a sense. I just had made it to the other side of things, so that relatable factor, um, even going back to statistics again, um, I had looked up a article, uh, a couple articles, and they say regardless of what therapy is taking place between therapist and her client, the number one factor that determines whether the therapy will be successful or not is the therapeutic bond that you establish with your client.
Mm.
So going in there, being that I had that stuff, we had that commonality in my past, and I wasn't coming in there to be um, a dictator and just it was just going through the motions as if it was just a job to me. I came in there, I had the similar background. I treated each one fair. I treated them on a one-to-one basis, even if it was a rapist. I didn't I didn't treat them any differently than I did the other person. Whoever crime was less or more severe, I treated you on a one-to-one basis, and I basically gave everybody a clean slate and didn't hold any past crime what they did um, against them in relation to our bond, our relationship, our friendship that we would develop or that I was open to. So those things opened the door for me to be successful in a lot of ways with them. And the different exercises we did were very practical, very relatable, and it was all filtered through CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. And I would incorporate real world scenarios that they could relate to that was either crimes that they've done. And I would even do some exercises with them and share some of the crimes that I've done.
Mm-hmm.
And we would walk through the process of the thoughts and feelings and the belief systems that took place at that time when I or they did it, and then we would go back and basically deconstruct those things and then replace them with the appropriate beliefs, thoughts, and feelings, and how we could have responded to the situation differently.
Mm.
It was very enjoyable and very beneficial. And I still have some recommendation letters actually that I had them write for me. And there was this one guy in my first group. He didn't want anything to do with the group. He came in there, he asked me before I knew that uh he was mandated to come to my group. He said, "Am I supposed to be here?" It was my first group. And I said, I'm not sure or whatever. So he turned around and walked out. And he had probably about 380 something years.
Jeez.
And he was dubbed, well, I don't want to reveal too much for the sake of his identity, but he was in Philadelphia, actually in the same area where I ended up going to when I was younger to buy drugs and bring them back to Delaware. And he was raised in that same area that I used to go to, and that's where he did his crimes. And he had a few attempted murders and uh, he was robbing people there and shooting them as well.
Mm.
But we ended up having him and I ended up having one of the probably the closest bond out of all the groups that I had there. But he started off defiant, resistant to it, and then as time went by, opened up, bonded, um, and he would participate in the groups. And even when people were kind of not motivated, he would jump in and share his exercise, and he was one of the most consistent ones. But he ended up opening up to me and allowing me to get into I guess an intimate place with him. And he was also from a different belief than I was, what made it a little bit more interesting. He was a professing Muslim.
Mm.
So regardless of the couple barriers that were there as far as him being resistant, him, I mean, us having different prescribing a different face, he dropped his guard and allowed me in, and we developed a bond. And I still think of him from time to time now. And yeah, so a lot of good experiences there.
It never ceases to amaze me just how many professions are stuck to the idea of empathy, and how a person can be successful in their profession by exercising a healthy amount of empathy. I mean, to be a good salesman or salesperson, empathy. I was trained as a negotiator, and empathy was always the common denominator. And to be a good doctor, empathy. Uh, so many things. It's surprising. And in relationships, I recently read a great book, David Burns, Feeling Good Together. Highly recommend it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's about empathy, and his technique, the Burns method. Some people call it mirroring. Some people call it
Mm-hmm.
well, I'll just tell you what it is. So it's really just trying to put yourself into the mind of the person in this relationship or negotiation, and thinking about how it is they must feel, and then telling them how they feel in a
Mm-hmm.
way that validates it, not in a sarcastic way. Well, I guess you were upset because I was late,
Yeah.
but like you felt as though you were not important to me, and you felt that way because I didn't give you my time. So in a way that's validating, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the seems seems to be like every day when you're aware of it, when you're aware of the importance of empathy, it comes up in so many conversations. But you get there through inflection, through that thinking about yourself in a realistic and honest way.
Yeah, and by having that empathy for people and taking that time to put yourself in somebody's shoes, it helps ground you and put you in a more sobering, uh, put you in a more, yeah, a more realistic, healthy approach to that person. So you're not skewed in the approach that you do take to them. Even going back to the prison situation, when I looked at them, I was reminded, even driving in and out of the prison, it was surreal to me at times because I knew that I could have easily been there.
Oh man, I there was a time where the place I worked, I had to drive past a prison, and I thought that so sincerely, what you just said, that some days I would take a different route just so that I didn't drive past the prison. Because every time I drove past there, I was just like guilt stricken, and
Mm,
I was like, I belong there for sure.
mm,
There's a little question in my mind, and inflection will do that to you. It makes not judging people so much easier. It it's almost a reflex. It's almost like in so many cases, I'll concede that it's difficult in the cases of rape and child molestation, but for many, many, many people, many times I can just without really having to try it. I don't even get myself to a place where um I feel I've got one up on them.
yeah, yeah, I never, yeah. And thankfully that is a quality I possess, I would say, I mean, when it comes to engaging people, especially, well, and being a Christian, there's certain perceptions that people usually can assume about me, that I am looking down upon them and they're the dirty sinner per se, and you kind of can get put in that stereotypical holier than thou, even with 18 years of sex. Somebody can hear that and probably imagine that in my view of myself that I'm gliding around in all white with a halo around my head, and
Mm.
but that is far from the case. Like, going back to the prison situation again, I was right at home with them a lot of times, and I mean they sensed it as well, and they knew about a few of them knew about my journey of abstinence and my I mean becoming a Christian and all that, but I was still able to laugh it up with them, be real with them, share um, vulnerable information with one another, and some very real moments. Um, but it all goes back to, yeah, I guess that I don't even know how we got there about the perception of of being viewed that way. I can't remember what you had brought up.
Well, it was kind of what leading up to what I was getting to, and that's the ability to inflect
Oh,
and
about having one up on people. That's what you said.
mm,
Being having one up on people now, and knowing what I've came from, what God has forgiven me of, and knowing that it's only by Him helping me that I have arrived where I am and able to stay where I am. It keeps you in a humble way because it is the credit is not. I'm not attributing the credit to my own ability. I know that what I've done wasn't my own ability, and me being able to continue to live isn't my own ability. So that keeps me in a humble place, and also knowing that the people that I meet, that I run across, regardless of what um, behavior they may be still engaging in, that I don't don't agree with, or I mean, that doesn't fit into my uh, faith framework. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't cause me to look down upon them, and I know that they can also change as well. That there's nobody beyond changing, and I extended that same belief to the pedophile, to the rapist, to all of them in prison. You know, so that just keeps me in a humble place of the people that I interact with. It's definitely not a one up thing.
well, there's an opportunity for people to achieve humility without God if they want to go that way,
I
it,
would agree.
which comes to like the idea of free will. So some people would say that they connect free will to their belief in God, and I see them to be kind of mutually exclusive because
Mm,
if because to say that like I chose God out of my complete free will, that kind of puts some emphasis on me and my the decisions that I make, right? Because I take some pride in it, but um,
mm,
imagine for a moment that there is no God at all and no possibility of a God,
mm-hmm.
that even still we don't have to have free will. So we're not exactly responsible for everything that comes about in our life, and that's good or bad. So like for example, you may hear people say, I'm completely self-made, I'm a self-made millionaire, I'm a self-made billionaire. And if
Mm-hmm.
you really think about it, no one is, right? No matter how if you game it out far enough, no one is completely self-made.
Nah, other people played a part into that
Someone
success.
played a role there, yeah. At
Yeah.
some point you got lucky. You probably came from, in most people's cases, they came from a two-parent household, right? Um, and even in the cases of the people who didn't, who came from the slums and then rose up, they had a mentor in there somewhere, or and if you can attribute it to their mindset to be just the constantly striving mindset, well, they
Mm-hmm.
didn't choose their mindset either, right? And they didn't choose their biology. They also didn't choose which country they would be born into or which time in history.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well,
So so anyway, there's opportunity, but talking about talking about not judging people, that for me that comes from inflection. And I wanted to read the forward of your book here, which talks about your experience with mushrooms. For 18 years, Francis Frank, you know there's where this is going. Francis Frank Harris lived a life that many would find hard to believe. He went 18 years without sex. From his early teens, sex and drugs were a normal part of his life. However, after a bad trip on mushrooms turned his life upside down, everything came to a screeching halt. Following the aftermath, it goes on, but the point really is that your life improved. And so the point I want to make is,
did
if the
mushrooms
mushrooms
bring
were the
my ep
if the mushrooms were the catalyst for a better life, was it really a bad trip?
Yeah,
Was it
yeah.
or was it a good trip? See, because people ask me all the time, like, what do mushrooms do to you? And I say, well, it just makes you inflect. It really, if you're paying attention, you can see your life from another perspective, and that has a lot of utility. Like you don't, it's not like DMT. Like a lot of people think you take it and suddenly you see purple elephants everywhere, but really, for me, it's just thinking deeply, um,
Hmm.
and far less toxic than alcohol. Like you drink alcohol and you don't see things, but your mind is like, oh, woo, in outer space. But and similarly with mushrooms, you don't really see things. I think it's much less potent, um,
Hmm.
but I also stopped labeling trips. It's been a while since I've taken psilocybin, but I certainly took a champion requisite dose more times than I can count on my hands and toes, and
Hmm.
had the experience necessary. And some of them were, I know what you mean by bad trip. There's no question. But I've started just to not label them, and to consider that if I had to label a bad trip, I might call it a difficult trip now, because a lot of good things are difficult, right? Like exercise is difficult, studying
Hmm.
is difficult, going 18 years without sex is difficult. So a lot of stuff that can help us is difficult. So I wanted to ask you if you might consider consider that the psilocybin wasn't such a bad thing.
Changing the word bad to
Difficult.
yeah. Um, I see what you were saying, and I would agree to a point. Um, like I said, a lot of things we experience, I guess you can say, is going back to perception, is what you're basically getting at. You know, what was it truly bad if, you know, if it ended up influencing me, you know, to better my life in some shape or fashion? And I guess I can agree to that point, but I wouldn't say that I needed to take mushrooms in order to do that, that I could have arrived on a healthier path um by not doing mushrooms and learning things in a more healthier way. And it kind of reminds me of that saying where people say I wouldn't have changed anything in my life.
Hmm.
A lot of times when I hear that, I'm like, I'm
Yeah, you're
pretty
nuts.
sure you would.
Yeah.
You know, and it's when people say it, it's kind of, it seems like an attempt to,
Spoken by someone with a two-parent household.
yeah, kind of just a over their attempt to make good of their past. Like it's an oversimplistic way of putting it, but an attempt to, you know, make good the things in their past that do trouble them at times. You know, but I don't think that's an honest way of really looking at it. No, there's definitely some things that I would have changed that, you know, if I could go back in the time, and I'm pretty sure there's some things that you would change as well because you're still crippled over those things today and struggling with those things. So all those things in your past didn't have a positive outcome. And um but yeah, but anyway, not to go down that rabbit hole, but the mushroom experience I had, I probably might have probably had some bad, what you might have called difficult trips before, but this was bad, and my mind was already changing my mindset before I had this bad trip on mushrooms. I was already becoming more aware of the lifestyle that I was living in, as far as the reality of the depths of the wrong or wrongs I was doing, and just being more aware of that was starting to be troubling to me. You know, I was a ninth grade dropout. I was in I wasn't the pride of my mother. I was the black sheep on, I mean, among her family. I didn't have anything going for myself. I didn't have any positive aspirations, no I didn't even have no desire to do anything legit besides probably music, but no 9 to 5 job. I just wanted to sell drugs the rest of my life.
Hmm.
But after realizing how horrible, you know, I was living, it was starting to eat at my conscience more and more, and my belief in God began growing more at that time and expanding in different ways, and learning more things about God. So my conscience was becoming more accountable in that way too, and being aware of me, how far I was off the mark when it came to my lifestyle, to what God wanted from me. So those combination of things, God and my conscience, were starting to plague me. And then I took my mushrooms in the midst of that, and
It just
that
turned it
was
up to 11.
yeah, indeed. And
That's,
it wasn't the trip in itself. It was the kicker was in the morning when I had woke up and I was still tripping,
yeah.
and
It's
that's what
amazing you
freaked me out.
managed to sleep, actually.
Yeah, and that's and I panicked when that happened, you know. So I already was
Hmm.
becoming depressed because of my awareness growing of, you know, I mean, my lifestyle, and becoming discontent with that, and experiencing cognitive dissonance with that, knowing what's right, but still wanting to do what's wrong, and then being depressed and then waking up and still tripping and never experiencing that before, went into panic mode with the background of all that was going in my mind. It just sent me down um crazy train. And I
Yeah.
try to, sober up from it, get in a cold shower. I mean, that's what popped in my mind. I don't know if that works with mushrooms, but I heard it, with alcohol to get over a hangover.
Hmm.
So I was laying in the bathtub, cold water running over me. And that didn't work. So that's made me panic even more.
Hmm.
And long story short, had to end up seeing a psychiatrist and getting prescribed medication.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely wouldn't say it was a difficult trip, but a bad one.
Yeah, that may be more than difficult. I'll concede there. That
Yeah,
seems pretty terrifying.
yeah, and it didn't, and it was like a constant anxiety feeling in my chest that I experienced for probably at least 3 months.
Well,
And
what it does is, well, and I hate to break it to you, but you're still kind of tripping in a sense. Some of the studies that I'm familiar with say that the benefits of psilocybin last 40 years. It doesn't completely go away until about 40 years. The areas of our brains that it wakes up, and that's really all it does, right? So, so and that can have its effects, no doubt.
mm,
But I agree, and no matter how you get to the point of inflection, the real key is to inflect, and um, and you can get there without mushrooms. Um, for me, it's a way to ensure that I get there. No ifs, ands, or buts. No stopping to collect $200. Don't pass go. You just go straight from zero to
mm.
enlightened in however long in 2 hours. But
So, so when you say inflect, what do you mean by that? I heard you mention it a couple times. You basically mean self-reflection or introspection.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, all that. So there's I'm recently discovering that meditation isn't what I thought it was before. I thought it was like breathing or a way to get yourself into some kind of calm state or something like that, or even a practice of developing our ability to concentrate. And it turns
Mm,
out that it's not that at all. It's really just thought experiments. And so there's many different types of meditation.
mm.
You can sit down for 10 minutes and meditate about anything. You
Yeah.
can sit down and meditate about your kids.
Mm,
You can meditate on love and just wish people well. In fact, that's a form of meditation. I think it's called metta, and you just sit and do that. But there's another form of meditation that involves thinking honestly about your mistakes and what you would do better, and really, like you had said, you may have done with the inmates, getting down to dissecting what was the problem, where did it originate, and what mindset did you have while you were there, and is
mm,
there something you can identify that you might do differently the next time you get yourself into that situation, and just kind of
yeah.
rehearse that, go through it over and over again, because and I'm amazed by how many people don't do this in life so often. Like, I see people or riding in the car with them, they get cut off on the road, and they're like 56 years old, and they're freaking out, like hitting the horn and what are you doing, like, you asshole, like this person insulted your children. It's
Yeah.
like the person has no idea what they've done to you, and after you know 40 years, or 56 years old, after 40 years of driving, you haven't gotten used to it yet. It's just like the first time you've ever been cut off, really.
Mm,
You just haven't gotten. And that's like what a lot of controlling anger is. And I got to be a counselor in crisis intervention, and that seems to be the most helpful form of crisis intervention, is is going where you don't want to go, is thinking about the trauma
Yeah.
over and over again until basically you get tired of it. I mean, that's a crude summary of it, but it's not too far from the truth.
And it's necessary, you know, to deconstruct those traumas, like I said, and to analyze how it impacted you. Because, you know, I mean, that's where the crux of it is. And if you don't have the courage to go delve into those dark areas, you're always going to be crippled in some fashion in your life. You know, you can't just shove it under the rug and keep pushing and think that, you know, it's going to resolve on its own.
Yeah.
And you're going to just be kind of living life by the seam of your pants, and you're going to be experiencing these problems. And then you're going to start asking yourself, why does this keep happening to me?
Yeah.
One of the reasons why it keeps happening to you, because like you said, you haven't been doing the work of of dealing with those issues, those traumas of the past, and looking more deeper into your behavior. You're just acting off impulse and just going by pure emotion or wherever you feel led, and you can't live that way and expect healthy results.
Yeah. Just being a slave to your desires.
And just like I said, just kind of blindly walking through life, not giving a lot of thought to anything is, I mean, a sure way to constantly get yourself in some challenges.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. Something else I've been reading about, it's been trending for the last, I don't know how many years, 10 years or so, but mindfulness, which is
Hmm.
the absence of, is like you said, going through life not thinking about stuff, right?
Hmm.
Not being present in what's going on right now. You know, what am I thinking and why am I thinking it?
Yeah, you can go too far down the rabbit hole, because there is a time for, I guess, just letting loose and having fun, and um, not being so much of a deep thinker. And I think I still need some growth in that area myself. You know,
You and me
when
both.
you're
I
dealing.
mean, as you're talking, I'm just picturing the 20 people who have told me the same thing.
Yeah, you know,
maybe
because
maybe you don't need to think so much about stuff, Jonathan.
yeah, like I said, it's needed more in this world, but at the same time, it can be to a detriment as well. You know, there's a time to just, you know, have fun and not break, you know, I mean, get into too many complex things. And even though, even the trauma, you know, there's time to dig into it, maybe a time for counseling, maybe, you know, but then there's a time to go enjoy your dog, or you're not, without even just thinking, you're just in the moment playing with your dog, or you know, you go on a walk, or you enjoy your friends or whatever. That's just more surface level conversation. But I
Yeah,
like the deeper stuff because that's what gets me going too. So, you know,
I've
but
made a few
yeah.
videos on that, and it's full disclosure. It's because I recognize that problem with myself.
Mm,
That's
mm,
something I struggle with, that I deal with. I'm always trying to get through things so that I can do what I consider productive. You know, if
mm,
I'm watching a movie with someone, I'm just looking at my watch, can't wait until it ends so that I can get back to doing what I think that I should be doing. But the reality is, I
mm.
have nothing important to do other than just watch the movie and enjoy myself. And
Yeah.
that's hard. That's hard to wrap my mind
Mm.
around.
Time and place for everything. Takes discipline to, you know, shift. A lot of people um, that are, I guess you can say, are artistic. You know, that whether it be music or drawing, or you know, it maybe can even be applied to different areas, or you know, I mean, different hobbies or something. But you can be so immersed in something, then it can come time to, you have to go do another activity. You have to go to the grocery store before, you know, in order to have food tomorrow, or breakfast yeah, before you go to work. Or it might be time that your kids game is, or it could be even your child or wife knocking on the door, and you can become so irritated because you got to pull yourself out of that mode.
Hmm. That's
You know,
something.
'cause, what are you about to say?
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You want to finish your thought?
Yeah, I was just saying it's like where that discipline comes in at. It's like cutting off that line of inspiration, even when you're making progress on something, and that's where the discipline comes in. But you can be so immersed in something, you can start skipping meals. I've done it with music, when
Yeah.
I'm writing music or when I'm even reading the Bible or sometimes, and I'm making headway on something. But that's where that discipline comes in, and it's like it's very much needed because you can think that this is very important, which it is, but brushing your teeth and eating is important too.
Yeah.
You know? Uh,
Yeah. And like I think the video I made was question greed, like, question growth mindset or something. Because you hear that's in the self-help space. It's like connected to growth mindset
hmm.
and growth mindset. Maybe some people need more of that, but for some people it's a curse. Um, and I wanted to ask you about that in your writing process. Was it how long did it take, and was it difficult to write? I suspect I've gotten my answer already. Whereas because in regards to denying pleasures, I mean, I probably, like, people ask me, how did you write a book? And I was like, well, easy. I just didn't hang out for 52 weekends in a row.
I
And
can.
it's like, how did Jeff Bezos become a billionaire? Well, that's simple. He didn't spend money. He
Mm,
didn't take a dollar out of Amazon for like what 10 or 20 years. Instead,
that's
he
that
just relied
discipline.
he relied on you spending your money, right? Every time you got $100, you spent it on Amazon, but every time he got $100,000, he didn't spend a dime of it, put it right back into the business. But so was it difficult for you to write the book? What's some of your writing process like?
It took 2 years to write it. Um, it wouldn't have uh taken that long if I didn't have to brush up on my writing skills and I didn't just zoom through it on the first run. When I first wrote it, I just was just kind of my approach was just to freestyle, not very much structure it in a particular way. I was just gonna just free thought, just go right, and however it naturally panned out, it did. There's still a strong element of that in the finished book now, but it wasn't. I didn't take the approach to it that my approach to it wasn't as thorough. And if I wanted it to be accepted more broadly and respected more, there was more effort and detail that I had to take in my approach. So there was a couple rough drafts at first, and then it was more colorful than actually what it is
Hmm.
at the moment. I think people probably one of their assumptions of my book, 18 Years Without Sex, that it was probably going to be a typical Christian book on abstinence or sexual purity, that it was going to be very much polished but it's
Mm-hmm.
very raw. And it was even, like I said, it was even more colorful before this last edit. So I had to go through that and pass it through different people and, get their perspective on it. And then I'm a slightly perfectionist as well. So then I had to fight with that. But then yeah, so all those factors ended up playing into it. So I had to brush up on my writing skills. I had to structure it in a better way and never writing a book before. That was my first book. I'm not an excellent writer by any means. So, all those things factored in is why it took 2 years. I actually started writing a book before I had got married. So it was over a 2 period year span.
Well, it is interesting so far, and you got stories in it. Everybody likes stories.
Yeah.
There's another book that I thought of before I read yours. I think it was a Christian-y book. I think it was called I Kissed Dating Goodbye or something like that.
This
And
sounds familiar.
yeah, I mean, there are a dime a dozen. But it was wildly popular. He made a lot more than a dime on it, I can tell you that. But your book is far more interesting so far in my view. So I do
Yeah.
recommend people get it. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's no question. There's more
Yes,
utility there. Having
yeah.
having been someone who had the experiences you did, there's more utility in what you have to say.
Yeah, and that was one of the points of being as transparent as I was in the book, even about the sexual experiences I had. And that was kind of a thin rope to walk because I got to be mindful of my audience. And I mean, I don't want to, I don't want to unnecessarily arouse, somebody that's reading a book about, abstinence, and also the Christian component with the complexities of different views and different stages people can be at in their walk. But as far as, people that are non-religious or don't have a belief in God, I could be much more raw with. But even coming back to the Christian audience, there's a need for messages to be more real, more raw when it comes to Christian audiences. And this has been one of my criticisms of the contemporary church now, and even church in past. We live in a world where we experience different stuff, whether it be conversations or stuff that we may watch or that we just encounter in day-to-day life as we live our lives. But then when we go to church, it seems that a lot of times we try to over polish things and present things in a way that's non-congruent with our day-to-day lives. It's like if I were to say penis or vagina from the pulpit, people would be there shaking in,
Mm.
in their seats.
Oh yeah.
But some of these people are going back and watching these television shows that
Right.
that are using vulgar language, and some of them even using vulgar language, to be honest.
Yeah.
So it's like there's not that realness there. And I'm not saying that there shouldn't be tact in how you present different material, but nevertheless, I believe that there needs to be some more rawness, you know, and I think it'd be more even therapeutic and beneficial to the people that do hear the messages. So that was the balance that that was difficult in there. And talking about sexual experiences, there's only so much polishing I can do, you know.
Sure.
So, but yeah, I wanted to be relatable. I wanted it to be real, and while still um, creating a space where people could, get something from it that was beneficial to them.
Well, I think that you've accomplished that. And again, I recommend everybody go check out the book. It's 18 Years Without Sex by Frances Harris. It's available on Amazon right now. You need to raise the price a little bit
Yeah.
soon, uh, and consider the sequel to your book, 25 Years Without Sex, coming soon.
Well, actually, I can't write that book now because I'm married. So
It'll have to be about someone else then.
18 years with sex.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, we'll look forward to that one. And hey, thanks very much for taking the time out of your day to talk to me today. I really appreciate it.
Yep. I appreciate the convo. It was good. I enjoyed it. Took a different turn than I imagined, but like I said, it's the natural flow of things. So
That was a
I enjoyed
summary.
it nevertheless.
It's, you could describe my whole life that way, taking quite a different turn than
Yeah.
expected.
Yeah, I think all of us can relate to that in some form or fashion.